But in this week's episode, I wanted to talk about something that is equally relevant, especially for small business owners. And if you hear the term small business owner and you think that's not you, there are several people out there who may not own their own small business per se. They work in corporate America or a W-2 job, but they have some type of LLC, or they're a member of an LLC, or you may work for a small business and be one of its key employees. And if you are in any of those camps, this week's episode is still relevant to you because it's about something called the Corporate Transparency Act. And the Corporate Transparency Act was passed way back in 2021, but there's a deadline that's right around the corner as it pertains to the act that I would say the overwhelming majority of people I come across that are impacted by it are completely unaware of. So let's talk through what the act is and why it's so important that you understand this deadline. The Corporate Transparency Act was something that was passed with the goal of actually making it harder to do things like evade taxes and launder money through entities where up to this point in time, it has been easier to hide who is benefiting or who is actually owning the entity. So for example, when you think about things like what you see online, when you have this, drug dealer or money launderer who has all these offshore international shell companies where there's 3 or 4 different companies that are obscuring the actual source of revenue, those are things that actually happen in real life. And part of the reason that people have been able to evade taxes and launder money is because there is not always a large amount of information that's required in terms of who actually owns the entity. For example, we've talked about LLCs in previous episodes, and we have said that an LLC could have members or owners of the LLC that are actually individuals, but you can also have an LLC whose members are other LLCs. So if you think about how complex that can get, if you have one LLC and then the members of that LLC are other LLCs, and if you look at that LLC, the members of that are other LLCs, you can see how you can get into a scenario where it can be very hard to discern who actually owns and operates and benefits from that entity. Well, the Corporate Transparency Act aims to resolve this or solve this by not only requiring that you give reports on the beneficial owners, but it creates a database where it can actually identify the individuals themselves to have a better idea of the individuals instead of the entities that are benefiting from things like an LLC or an S Corp or a PLLC. If you're wondering just how big an impact this could have, there's an estimate that over 30 million entities would be required to actually file reports as a result of the Corporate Transparency Act. And many of these entities could have several members. So in terms of the number of people that it impacts, it is well over 30 million. And the number is probably inestimable, but there are people out there who think they are not impacted, and they definitely are because of what the act considers a beneficial owner. But before we get into that, let's talk about who actually has to file these reports as a result of the Corporate Transparency Act.